Hello everybody and welcome back to Necronalysis. I'm Atraitus and I am here today to take a look at Revolt, a racing game that came out in 1999 and was developed by Probe Limited and published by Acclaim Entertainment. Now, to say that I've played this game before would be a bit of an understatement, because in my childhood this game was essentially my entire life. 90% of my gaming was Revolt. I still have the muscle memory from it, I'm still very, very good at it, and it's much, much harder than it actually appears when I'm playing it. I chose to cover Revolt because I loved it in my youth. I remembered it as looking, playing, and sounding just amazing, and I wanted to see really how it stood the test of time, and I wanted to see if I could find any way to improve this game that I remembered as being absolutely perfect. Revolt is a radio-controlled car racing game, and it's a pretty arcadey one. There's a lot of power-ups, the physics aren't entirely accurate, even in the simulation mode, and the physics are really very cruel, but they result in a lot of hilarity as well. As I stated before, Revolt is a game that I viewed in my youth as being absolutely perfect. So I really just want to jump into this right away and take a look at it and see if my memories are in fact accurate. So let's jump in. Revolt has 6 modes to it: the single race, the championship, the time trial mode, the practice mode, the stunt arena, and the clockwork carnage mode, which is very, very silly. Let's just discuss these one at a time. The single race mode is just that, it's a single race. You choose your car, you choose your track, and then you race. The single race mode is important to do though. Every time you win a race that you haven't won before, you make progress towards unlocking a new car, which is very, very important. Championships are, of course, the main mode of progression. You race in the championship, and depending on where you place in the race, you get a certain number of points going forward, and whoever has the most points at the end of either 4 or 5 races in Platinum Cup. All of the other championships are 4 races. So at the end of each championship, whoever has accumulated the most points wins the championship, and winning the championship unlocks the tracks for the next championship, as well as a large selection of cars. Time trial is probably fairly self-explanatory. You race against the clock and try to beat a set time. When you do beat a set time for all of the tracks in a certain championship, you then unlock the reverse mode of that track, which is literally just racing that track in reverse. And then when you beat that time trial, you get the mirrored mode. And when you beat that time trial, then you get the reverse mirrored. So really, time trial just unlocks more track variants. It doesn't unlock cars, it doesn't unlock tracks. The practice mode essentially allows you to free roam around a track, and it has the goal of finding a somewhat hidden star on the track. When you do find the star, at that point you can just quit the practice mode, and some of those stars are very difficult to get, some of them are not difficult at all. But when you get all of the stars for a particular cup's tracks, at that point you unlock additional cars once again, so this is really another very important progression mode. And that's largely because the championships can be very difficult with the cars that you just have available from the previous championship. It's really not very easy to just keep going throughout the championships. You almost have to do the single races and practices in order to advance. It's that difficult. The stunt arena is just that, a stunt arena. There are a lot of stars scattered around this map that the player has to perform tricks to receive. Getting these involves doing things like going off of jumps, using a skateboard half-pipe, going around a loop-de-loop, things like that. It's fairly standard stunt arena fare. Once the player has collected all of the stars in the stunt arena though, then the Clockwork Carnage mode is unlocked. And Clockwork Carnage is a silly, silly mode. In Clockwork Carnage, you get a car that is not available in any other mode. It's very light, very fast, very, very difficult to control. And then rather than the normal 8 or 12-man races of the normal modes, Clockwork Carnage is a 30-man race mode. It's just massive craziness and rampant silliness for the entire race. It's probably one of the most fun game modes, although there is no progression whatsoever tied to it. And then we come to the cars. Although there are 34 cars in Revolt in total, only 28 of them are accessible without a cheat code. At first, the player has access to only 8 cars, called by the game Rookie Cars. These are the cars that are available for Bronze Cup. And while they are certainly the slowest cars, they are by no means non-viable later in the game. I know for a fact that it's possible to at least beat Gold Cup with the second slowest car in the game. No one that I know of has managed to beat the Ultimate Cup though, Platinum Cup, with anything less than a Gold Cup car. Completing the Bronze Cup progression grants an additional 5 cars, which are termed the Amateur cars, and this is the case going forward. Each cup's progression will grant 5 cars of the next class. The progression split for unlocking these cars is 1 car for your single races, 1 car for your practices, and 3 cars for winning your championships. And championships, of course, will unlock your new tracks as well. By default, the game comes with 13 tracks pre-installed, however each of those also have a mirrored, a reversed, and a reversed mirrored component. And the game includes a track editor, which allows you to download tracks made by members of the community, which is still remarkably active, as well as creating your own tracks. You'll start the game with 4 of the stock tracks available, and each time you win a championship, you will unlock 3 additional stock tracks. And each championship is composed of the 3 tracks that were unlocked, as well as 1 from the previous championship in mirrored form. So if you were to count mirrored, reversed, and reversed mirrored as a different track in the track number, you come up with 52 total tracks by default. And then you have the ability to create your own on top of that, so there's really no lack of track content in Revolt. And each track has many power-ups that the player can acquire as well. I'm just going to go down the list and talk about the Shockwave first, or as I called it in my youth, the Foghorn. It doesn't sound like a foghorn, but the icon kinda looks like a foghorn, so that's why I called it that. The Shockwave sends out a pulse that will lift and flip any cars that come near it, and it will also ricochet off of corners. This is of course very useful for taking out your opposition, even if you don't have a direct line of sight on them. And then there's the Firework, which comes in a pack of either 1 or 3. It's a homing missile that takes time to lock on, and is relatively short-ranged, but if you use it when you're too close, you might also be affected by the explosion. It can also bounce off of walls to some degree, so it is very possible to shoot yourself with a rocket, and then you feel like a massive fool when you do. If you can manage to hit with it though, there's not really a better way to take out a single enemy that's a ways ahead of you. The Electropulse, or Zapper as I called it, covers your car in electricity for 10 seconds, and then whenever any other cars come near, will disable them for 3 seconds. This is an amazing power-up if you can catch up with someone who's ahead of you, or if someone is about to pass you, because it will disable your opponent for 3 full seconds and will give you a very, very large lead over them. The Global Pulse, or simply Star as I called it, can be collected in actually 2 ways, unlike any other power-up. There's a secret star hidden around each track, and collecting it will give you the Global Pulse, or potentially you can also get it from a standard pickup. However, that's extremely rare. Global Pulses function exactly the same as the Zapper does, except they affect everyone else on the track. You don't have to get close to your enemies to use it. Naturally, this is an incredibly amazing tool, however, usually going out of your way to find the secret star will result in you losing more time than you gain by using it, and so you're better off just hoping it comes up in the pickups, but that's incredibly, incredibly rare. The next pickup that you can get is the Bomb, and you really don't want to be the Bomb, generally speaking. Your car will turn black and the antenna will start burning down like a fuse, and when it reaches the car, you will explode, and that usually loses you quite a bit of time. However, you can pass it off into other cars by touching them, and the victim then gains the remaining fuse time. If you can pass it off to somebody else, it's an okay pickup, but usually when you get the Bomb, it's just this sinking feeling, because you just know you're going to blow up because you don't have anyone else to pass it off to. Having the Bomb does, however, make pickups be a bit of a double-edged sword and a bit of a risk to pick up. The next power-up is the Oil Slick, and it'll drop, well, an oil slick right behind your car, and any other wheels that go through the oil slick will lose all traction for a short time. It'll disappear after about 30 seconds, but it can be used to great effect around corners or in tight situations. The oil slick can really be used to gain a very, very large lead, but that's only if you can place it correctly, and to do that you really have to know where the AI drives on the track. Water balloons come only in a pack of 3 and will shoot straight forward. They will bounce off of the track once before exploding, but they will also burst on contact with other racers. While they are very difficult to aim, they will cause more damage than a rocket will. If you can hit with a water balloon, you're almost certainly going to pass that person, and you're probably going to gain at least 20 meters on them. Now the next pickup is called a ball bearing. I've always called it a bowling ball. It's just an extremely heavy ball that will essentially make anything that hits it come to a complete stop. When used strategically, such as in the tunnel in Toys in the Hood 1, it will wreak extreme havoc and will slow down your competition a lot. It's a very good power-up if you can use it strategically. The penultimate power-up is what the developers called the clone, and I have always referred to as the fake. Essentially, it drops a fake power-up on the ground, and anyone that runs into it will blow up, much the same as the bomb. Once again, when strategically placed, this can buy you a lot of time against a single opponent. And the final power-up is the battery, which can be used to give a lot of acceleration and a quick top speed boost. It lasts about 10 seconds, and it can be a bit of a double-edged sword because it makes it very difficult to control the car around corners in particular, so it's really best used in straightaways, but generally speaking there isn't a long enough straightaway in Revolt to use it completely 100% effectively. So how does all of this come together to make the game into a whole? Well, the amount of content is certainly padded by the progression mechanics, forcing players to play modes that they wouldn't necessarily play, such as time trials or practice modes, makes it so that there is quite a bit more content there than there would normally be. And because of the physics of the game, the lower tier cars handle much better than the higher tier cars, which certainly makes it possible to go far on the low tier cars, but it's certainly not easy because your top speed is so much lower than that of your competitors if you try that. And while power-ups are well balanced, and usually you're going to be better off having a power-up than not having a power-up, picking one up is always a risk because of things like the bomb, and potentially getting a battery in tracks where you really don't want one because they're so slippery already, such as the ghost towns. So really all of these things come together to form a very, very enjoyable whole. Indeed, very little has even changed with arcade racing over the years. Modern games might not include some of the sillier things, but the basic premise and the basic mechanics will remain the same to this day. That said, they're not making very many arcade racers these days. Most racing games are either simulations or other more realistic racing games. But Revolt holds up extremely well. The music and sound design don't sound too terribly dated, and the graphics are really very good for 1999. The game looks like it came out in 2005, and the graphics look really more stylized than dated, I would say. The gameplay holds up just fine, and the game is an incredible amount of fun. So then, how would I go about improving this already incredibly fun game? That would be very, very difficult. As I said before, I had thought that the game was perfect. Well, now I've amended that. I think the game is nearly perfect. One thing that I certainly considered as I was playing it was that the ability to fire backwards would be very handy. It would make it so that while in first place certain power-ups weren't completely useless. Or maybe the ability to drop power-ups without using them, that would make, for example, picking up a battery on the Ghost Town tracks much more useful. Both of these, though, really have some severe balancing concerns, because if you can throw things backwards, then suddenly, for example, water balloons become ridiculously good. And the ability to drop power-ups means that picking up batteries is no longer a risk for tracks like Ghost Town. Really, the game is already a well-tooled masterpiece, and it would be incredibly hard to add new features without upsetting the balance and making the game actually worse. So let's come to a conclusion on this one. Is the game still worth playing? Definitely. Honestly, you're doing yourself a disservice as a gamer if you've never played this game. It's an incredibly fun game. There's plenty of challenge there, and the community is still remarkably active. They're releasing new cars and tracks on a fairly regular basis, and they're still even maintaining the PC version so that it can run on modern systems and hardware. But do I think there should be an updated or a remade version? Well, I'm not honestly sure it needs one. As I said before, the game is nearly perfect. The community-developed 1.2 patch actually brings multi-threading, support for modern operating systems, widescreen resolutions. The graphics do look a little dated. A graphical overhaul might be nice, but I'm not sure what the engine limitations are there, and it would be tricky to pull off a graphical overhaul without actually destroying the aesthetic that they've developed. The game as is runs on modern operating systems just fine. All you have to do is install the game, install the 1.2 patch, and you're good to go. If you buy the GOG version, which I'll talk about in a moment, that actually comes with the 1.2 patch included. As far as buying the game, GOG is really probably your best bet. It's regularly $5.99. I managed to pick it up in the winter sale for $3, but I will include a link in the description. So have fun playing Revolt, and if you liked this episode of Necronalysis, like, comment, subscribe, you guys know the drill. If you didn't like it, you've been watching this for over 15 minutes. Please leave me a comment telling me why you watched this for over 15 minutes when you hated it, when you could have been standing next to a busy public door making whooshing noises every time it opened. I'll see you guys on Monday for general tomfoolery, and then next Friday again for Necronalysis. Until then, fare thee well.